Hello, good morning, good afternoon, happy Sunday. Giving it a few minutes to hopefully have some folks join. Good morning, thumbs up, good morning, happy Sunday, good morning. All right, I am giving it a few minutes. Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. Good afternoon, Linda. Hello, happy Sunday to you as well. And community, I do have some stuff to talk about, and we'll go from there and just let it flow. So let me do my intro. Good morning or afternoon. Let me fix that. There we go. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are joining us from. My name is Jewel Pearson, and this is Miss Bohemian Soul TV. This is Creating Home, a tiny house series. This segment is going to be What's Your Question? The other segment in this series is the conversations on intimate spaces that we host. Every Sunday, I offer live content. I do alternate between these conversations and between the conversations and this segment, the What's Your Question? As I have guests, I'm running out of guests right now. So, well, I have some feelers out. I just haven't heard back. So we'll see. As I introduce myself, I like to say that I built a kind of fancy tiny house in 2015. And since that time, I have shared my journey to hopefully inspire others who are interested in the movement. I do offer coaching and consultations to help others in their tiny house journey, and you will be able to find links to schedule with me in the video description below. And as I'm doing all of that, I serve up a lot of representation in the movement along the way. It is my intent to build figurative and literal community that is inclusive and accessible. And if you find this information and the video helpful, I hope that you will like it, you'll share it, you'll subscribe to my channel, and then also turn on the notification so that you'll know when content is live and available. All right. Good morning. Good morning from California. Hi, Crystal. Thank you. I'm glad you're here. We appreciate you being here in the background. Happy Sunday. I appreciate you all. So, hoping everybody's had a good week and we're headed into another week. And I'm wishing everybody good vibes for the week upcoming. I did want to, there was a question that I had come in that I decided I would talk to briefly here, is around parking locations. And I have covered that a couple of times in videos that I, again, will share in the video description here. But I specifically had a question about using Craigslist for I guess, kind of what to say on Craigslist, and I will speak to that briefly, and then ask that you refer to those two parking videos if you have more questions. So someone was asking me for kind of a script around Craigslist, and I'm not going to prepare a script because it's going to be individual. But I do again talk to that in detail. But in your Craigslist, so Craigslist is an option for finding a location. I've actually been very successful using Craigslist. Two of my long-term locations were found via Craigslist. And one of mine was found early on before tiny houses were even a thing. So it's more accessible to use Craigslist now because more people are familiar with tiny houses. And so I've just always created an ad. I include pictures of my home. I include details of my home, the specifications, the size, what I'll need as far as utilities. I often include, that I intend to, pay rent, because then you get somebody thinking about opportunity for them for financial benefit to them. And then I offer an opportunity to connect to talk further. I don't put all your business out on Craigslist, obviously, but putting that information out there. And then there's several, I guess you would call it pages within Craigslist, like for sale, lawn and garden, all types of pages. And I always put my ad on each of those pages, simply because it might be someone who is looking for to sell something, and my ads out there, and they hadn't even considered, they have land, they have access to property that would work for me, and they've not even considered looking in some of the areas, because they don't have any need to. So that way you have your ad visible to everyone in all of the spaces. And so that's really what I've done for Craigslist. And so I hope that helps. And again, refer to those parking videos, where I've talked about that in detail. And yes, I am back home. I am home. Absolutely, Krista. I kind of think it's fancy. And yes, I am home. I am in my space. I don't. I have it on blur, but I'm being stalked this morning by the feral cats, and so there's one sitting over my shoulder right now taking a bath. So yeah, the cats. I have some pictures everywhere I go outside. They follow me around. Happy Sunday. The other thing that I had planned to talk about, yes, don't forget to smash that like button, please. As many followers and shares as I can get out of. I appreciate you all. I think I talked about this briefly last week as well, about doing your due diligence, having the conversations, researching, and that applies to finding a parking space, that applies to working with the builder, that applies to buying a pre-built tiny house. All of the things that you are going to do within this movement require due diligence, and all of the things, like if you're doing anything, you want to do your due diligence. But specifically talking through tiny houses and this journey, doing your due diligence is so important. And doing your due diligence so that you're asking the questions and getting the information before you make major moves. And then as you're having conversations, making sure you get names of people you're speaking to, as much as the information as you can get in writing, following up, even if it's a phone call, and then you follow up to say after that phone call, hey, this is my summary of the conversation as I understood it, to give the person a chance to change anything that, if you misunderstood something, and also giving you that paper trail. So being sure that you are doing that is really, really important. Good morning. Hey, Sandra. Yes, the Allison is saying I still have the cats. So they were here before me. They live in the barn over here. They're multiplying and doing all the things that they do. And I just try to coexist with them. We have an unspoken agreement. feed them at least once a day, so that they'll hang around, and then they keep um, rodents and snakes away. And I don't want to jinx myself, but I have not seen a snake since I first got here. So I feel like they are on their job. Um, this past early part of the summer, there was a kitten palooza happening, and every time I turned around, I was finding some kittens in the road. So I've tried to have conversations with them about being responsible parents, and keeping up with their kids. And I am not a cat person. So I always say that, though I am more of a cat person now than I've ever been, because I am always interacting with them because they just follow me around. They run from me, but they also want to be right where I am to see what I'm doing. There is one, well, there are two that will let me pet them as I feed them. But any time outside of that, they don't want to be bothered. But then there is one that wants to be where I am, and has gotten to the point that he allows me to pet him. And they've also, none of them, when I first got here, feral cats, I learned, don't meow, but since I've been here, they have learned to meow. And so I understand that that is something that they will learn to do as they want to communicate. So now they meow. It's just been an interesting journey with them. Again, I am not a cat person. They can't come inside, none of that stuff. Even though I did have some kittens inside when I found them in the road. It's been interesting. But here we are. Um, yeah, I'm not the cat person, but they are some interesting characters out here. Um, Thank you for joining. So I appreciate you first time joining. Thank you for joining. I hope you'll come back. So one of the things that I decided that we could talk about today, is thinking. You're a cat person. I'm more of a dog person, but yeah, I'm being adopted by a cat family, so I really have no choice, I think, at this point. One of the things that I felt like we could talk about is considering tiny houses as for business use. Um, we generally talk about them from the perspective of living in a tiny house. But there's so much opportunity with tiny houses if you consider them for movable communities for residents as well as for business. And that's what I wanted to share and talk about today. It as I was thinking about this, one of the people that I've been trying to connect with to invite on to talk with as a guest is using a tiny house as a psychiatric studio, I think you would call it. And I'm going to share some pictures and talk about tiny houses for business opportunity. I am not building. I am not building the cats anything. They have a great big old barn over there, so they have an indoor space. Um, but I think they are interesting. And as I get off topic again, they have gotten to the point where they will climb in the tree to be able to look up in the loft, and I guess they hear me sometimes moving around, so they'll climb in the tree. They're really really nosy. Um, but anyway, so let me keep going. So I wanted to talk about tiny houses for mobile businesses, for considering them for movable communities, residential and business communities. And I'll talk about so I live in a rural area, and there is a college not too far from me, the next little town over. And so I have been in conversation with them, and I talked about this briefly the other week, to consider tiny houses, and I refer to them. Sometimes people get stuck on terminology, and tiny houses often make people think more of mobile homes in those communities and RV communities have often um, gotten a bit bad reputation because of the way they will go into disrepair. And so people want to lump them all the same and not see the opportunity that tiny houses present. We talked about that because tiny houses are stick built and offer an opportunity for the homeowner to manage them better, in my opinion, than um, mobile homes do. And so I know we talked about that last week. So this college that's in the area, I've had some conversations with them around considering tiny houses as a movable community, movable homes, movable businesses, because this area is 40 minutes 35-40 minutes outside of Charlotte, which is the big major area. So the college students often go into Charlotte for access to the major stores and the malls and their services and the bars and the things that college students do. And so considering the use, and they have plenty of land. Again, we're in a rural area, so they have plenty of land and space. So considering the use of a movable community in the homes, tying the community into their curriculum. So they offer courses around sustainability and things like that, and they offer some other um, courses on um, um, agriculture kind of things. And so tying the curriculum, tying the movable community into the curriculum so that it has a place in the curriculum, allowing perhaps, because it's not a huge community, but allowing perhaps the seniors in those courses to participate in using the residential part of the community as dorms, using the residential part of the community as learning spaces, as labs. And I have a beautiful video that I presented to them, but I haven't shared it out because I want to kind of keep it close to the vest because, once you share something out in the world, it becomes everybody's property. Um, but then within that community, with the movable businesses, allowing people to bring their businesses on to this community space. And what that allows is people to bring their businesses, and they're not into this area. So the area might not be an area where this business would want to exist full time, but they can bring their business into the area on these certain days or certain times, and pay and allow students in the area and allow people who live in the area to patronize their businesses. And then they then go into, they take their business back out into the areas where they um, are most popular, or have the most businesses. um, so there's a whole conversation happening in the chat that I'm going to have to look at in just a second. um, and of course it involves Robert, I see. Um, so that's what I want to talk about. And I am going to share some pictures. Um, Thank you, Crystal. Crystal is my support person. She's not my admin, but she acts in that capacity. And she always has my back. So I appreciate your support, Crystal, always. So thank you. And then I got to get to this conversation that's happening. But I want to share my screen as we talk about um, movable businesses. And so, and I want people to think out of the box for, like, you might have a business in your mind that you are interested in um, putting together, but you don't want the overhead that comes with having a brick and mortar location. And so the first house that you see here is Crew. And so Crew is um, eyewear. And these beautiful houses, there are two of them. Um, these beautiful houses were built by Preservation Tiny House in New Orleans. Tim is the owner of Preservation Tiny House. And these tiny houses were built with the New Orleans theme, the shotgun, and I've actually been able to visit one of them as it was being built. So it's got the New Orleans theme of the New Orleans flavor of housing, the kind of trying to keep that authenticity. But Crew is nationwide, so they use these tiny homes to showcase their eyewear. I have seen, and I couldn't find any pictures. I've actually seen a tiny house that was used as an optometry um, um, salon. Is salon the right word? You know what I'm trying to say. But so where you would actually have appointments, not just buy eyewear. You would also have appointments. So that's a way to consider using a tiny house. I think we've probably all seen something like the little coffee shop, but here's a coffee shop that is being a tiny house coffee shop. Here's a barber shop. Um, and again, the opportunity that it presents is not necessarily being tied down to one location. So here is a salon where you can see they've got all of the setup for a salon, but it's mobile. Beautiful displays, but again, it's mobile. So that way your clientele, you're not locked into to clientele in a specific area. You can serve multiple areas. Again, here's a barber shop. This is the Dr. Joanne, who I'm trying to. I've reached out to twice to see if we could get her to come share her story with the audience here. So it's a psychiatric clinic, and she's offering services to schools and other which I cut off. But beautiful, and she's got a tour. She's on IG is Dr. Joanne Psychiatry, and she has a tour of the tiny house on IG. Here's another barber shop. The thing I love about barbershops, I've seen so many people using their services to service the unhoused. So they're taking their mobile salon into an area to service people who may not have access and financial access and physical access to a location. So they're serving those people, and it might not be what they do full time, but they offer that as kind of an add on to service the community. I've also seen, and it wasn't a stick built tiny house, but I've also seen a service similar to that where it was washer and dryers, and they were taking the service, a mobile business of washers and dryers into an area to allow people, unhoused people, people who didn't have access and financial means to be able to wash their clothes. Here's another bistro. This I saw was interesting. So this is something associated with Cornell University. And so I think it's talking about sustainability, um, house energy saving innovation demonstrations is what it says, mobile education and outreach station. So you've got a university using a tiny house, a movable house to share information. And again, that means people don't necessarily have to come to your location to participate in your services or hear the information that you're sharing. You're able to take your information to consumers. And this one I just saw, so it's not a stick built tiny house, but I just saw this one, and this is actually local here in the Charlotte area where this person, and I was interested in this because I have considered having an event out here at my house, but I didn't want people in and out of my house to use the restroom. So this caught my eye for that reason. And then it caught my eye because this is such a good idea. You've seen the porta potties and all of those types of things, but here's something where it's more upscale. It's called Royal Flush. It's more upscale than just the standard porta potty. And you're taking that to people's events, and they have access to upscale porta potties. Um, this one is again more like a little restaurant, and you notice here they've even got the little seating area outside, so you can order your food and sit and eat um, at the area in the area. Another coffee shop. This I just this so this looks more like a schoolie, but I couldn't find many pictures of interiors. And so this is giving you an idea of what the interior could look like. So again, this looks like a barbershop or salon. But here's the interior, and it looks like luxury to me. Here's another mobile kitchen, and so they, as I saw the notes around this business, they it was at an event like a reception, and so they're taking the kitchen and they have the opportunity to prepare the food and serve the food, and for an outside event. And then this one is one. So I was trying to find a stick built tiny to talk about this, but this is one that I think there are a couple of them. This is one that is near and dear to me for um, having taking access to areas that don't that have our food deserts, and so they don't have, and you know where the food deserts are in the Black and brown communities. So they don't have access to good food. They have access to the corners store that might just have some chips and canned food and or McDonald's and the things that aren't healthy, but they're cheap, and we have access to it in our communities. And so this is an opportunity to take good food into our communities, into the food deserts, to help people have better access to foods that are better for them. And so there's that opportunity as well, and they're really set up really nicely. I think that's the last one, the last picture I had. I was I kind of thought about this as a last minute conversation, so I didn't do all of my due diligence on finding some pictures, but just an idea for consideration. When I first built my house, there was a couple who had um, a retail business. Yes, absolutely great for food deserts. Absolutely. Yeah, and yes, we're talking about um, businesses. Yes, that's the other thing. Thank you, Michelle. I forgot that one. A portable shower. So I did also see, like I was saying, the washer and dryers. I did also see a mobile business where they had showers. So again, for the unhoused, they were taking it. It had several showers, and so people could, they would take it into the areas of the unhoused, and people could take showers and bathe. Um, Absolutely. And so, yes, Rosalind, I think Rosalind is talking about, yes, the thought of people traipsing in and out of my house makes me never want to host an event again. Absolutely. So there's plenty of space out here to host an outside event, and I intend to host one. Like, I got to get this yard together, but I intend to host something, and I see it in my head, just a beautiful outside event. But I just don't want everybody having to come in and out of my house. I am very particular about my house. It's why, as people have asked, for events, when people are you bringing your house? Oh no. My house will never be one that people traipse in and out. I've seen the houses at the event and how people just do all of the things, and they don't care for and respect the house as the with the homeowner intention. So if I had a model that I was taking for sales, absolutely, I can see that. But a home that I live in, and just to have strange people coming in and out and touching stuff, absolutely not. Even when I offered my tours, I was very selective about um, allowing who I allowed in the space, and trying to make sure that I got good energy from people. And sometimes you can tell just in a written request that who should and should not be in your home. So absolutely. Um, Hi, Kimberly. Let's see. Let me see what else. Robert is saying, especially gift shops and personal tutoring services. Absolutely. The thing is, thinking about, so not being um, tied down, and I'm using tied down. So owning a business obviously is a risk in having done the due diligence to ensure that whatever you're marketing is viable for the area that you intend to put the business in. Obviously, it can be a service that people need and just have to use your services. And so that's kind of a no-brainer. But when you're thinking about something like maybe a niche market, there's the risk of am I going to place my business in the right area for the right people? And if you think about using a movable business for that niche opportunity, then that allows you to relocate your business. It allows you to take your business to the consumer. It allows you to decide my market is no longer in this city. Let me take my business somewhere else. And so you're not taking a L in losing on the brick and mortar. You're not taking an L in I've got this lease and now I'm stuck in the lease until said time that I can get out of this lease. Like there's so much opportunity. Again, even in the same city, maybe Tuesdays your area is popping over here. You take your business over to that area, and vice versa. You can be in two areas, two or three areas in a day, and just get hitting all of the areas to bring the business to you. Literally bring the business to you because you're taking your business into those areas. What I was saying before I got distracted, y'all know I get distracted, was when I first built my house. It was 2015, 2016, I believe. There was a young couple who was on on the other show, I'm pretty sure. Not Tiny House Big Living, but they had a retail shop and they were in Atlanta, a clothing store. Um, they ran into some challenges, which I kind of felt like they'd run into some challenges as I was thinking about it. One, their pop-up shop was 28 feet long, the same size as my tiny house. And so that theirs was to be a residential. They were going to live in the tiny house and also have this pop-up shop. 28 feet a, a massive size to try to relocate on a regular. It's also a massive size to try to have a pop-up shop. Like you're 28 feet long, you're going to need a space that can accommodate that. They didn't have a truck to move it about, so they were also sometimes depending on borrowing trucks or um, and then so they started running into problems with the city of Atlanta because you can't just pop up with a 28-foot tiny house and put it on the corner and the city is going to be okay with that. So I think there was a lot of opportunity there. I think their execution, the size was not the best route to go, but it's a fabulous idea, a fabulous idea. Um, Yes, Crystal is saying blood banks or mobile art studios for paint and sips or something. I love that idea. If you think about women, if you think about getting your mammograms, a lot of hospitals use a mobile service for mammograms so that they can be in an area. Um, I know that there are also mobile groomers, animal groomers, and vets use mobile businesses so that they can again serve their community. um, One of the things like I think about is like in this rural area there's so much opportunity to bring a business down in this area that people don't have access to because Charlotte is 45 minutes out. So much opportunity to bring a business here that people don't even really know they need. Simple businesses like nail salons. Like I think there's a nail salon here. Maybe there's one over in the next city. But having access to knowing that this mobile nail salon is going to be here every Wednesday versus me having to go to the next city or a food source or a boutique. Just thinking outside of the box and using the mobility to your advantage. Um, let's see what conversation is happening over in the chat. Um, I'm sure this is going to be good. Well, thank you, Robert. I appreciate it. So, Robert, we've missed you, and folks have asked where you were. Good morning to you. Let's see. Yes, mobile salons and barbershops, they are phenomenal, phenomenal. And yes, Robert is back. Thank you. Crystal, I don't know. We have to check. That's funny. Now it's Jules Robert. That's so funny. Um, yes, interesting. Fisk University, I think I put the wrong one in. Fisk University has a tiny house dorm community built from shipping containers. That, I mean, it just makes sense. Like space is at a premium. Using, if you think about for years, like even when I was younger, if you think about elementary schools when they run out of space, they always had the trailers out in Never Land. The challenge would be having to go out there when it was raining and stuff, when it was cold. But um, elementary, junior high, and high school, I always remember trailers being out there. But in areas where you have challenges for living residential um, opportunities for students, it just makes sense to use that type of a shipping container or a tiny house. Crystal is grilling Robert. Get to the bottom of it, Crystal. Um, Hello, Casey. You're fine, Crystal. Thank you for hosting the investigation. Yes, the crew movable business. Their tiny houses. They're the two that they have are really fabulous. And shout out to Tim at Preservation Tiny House. He's a great person. One of the things that my conversations with Tim, um, he's one of the few people in the tiny house community that is aware of the challenges around racism. He is a white man. The challenges around racism. I've done an event with him in New Orleans, and he was always willing to use his voice and always cognizant of where he was in New Orleans and being part of the community and not taking from the community. And so Tim was always is a fabulous person. I don't know. Last time I connected with him, he had his shop in New Orleans broken into, vandalized, and I think they stole a lot of his building equipment. So I need to reach out and check on him. But he builds beautiful, beautiful houses. It's a whole conversation that's happening in this chat with Robert. Yes, pop-up shops, pop-up shops. Kimberly, thank you for being here. Um, let's see. I might have put some of these in there. The mobile porta potty is a fabulous idea, I think as well. Casey is saying I've used the upscale porta potties. Not sure if it was that brand, but Target used them in Georgia when they were renovating the store so that customers had restrooms outside the Reno. Great idea. That's a fabulous idea. Um, Rosalind is saying Simply Produce is a mobile fruit and vegetable stand here in Atlanta. She started in a brick and mortar building. That's great. Oh, thank you. PM is saying thank you for expanding our minds on what tiny places can accomplish. This is great. Absolutely. Um, Welcome, Lisa. Glad to have you. Judith is saying if I have guests, make them use the barn for the bathroom. There are no plumbing services in there. There's a well. That's where I get my water from, but I would have to build something out there. But so a mobile service like the sister has is probably what I will use for sure. Um, C says the wheels are turning in my brain. I'd love to do something like this. Absolutely. That's what this whole conversation is. To have the wheels turning so that you can think about ways to utilize movable homes and businesses. Rosalind is saying my chiropractor is thinking about doing a mobile office. That would be awesome. It would be, again, you take your services to your customers. That's an excellent idea. That's Robert is saying should be also be considered for natural emergencies: laundry, shower, kitchen, bathroom, and a temporary personal storage. That was the thing I meant to talk about. So some of these services, um, being able to take them into areas, just like Robert was saying, taking them into areas that have been hit by storms and natural disasters, and being able to service a community that doesn't have access, that has temporarily lost access, absolutely is a great idea. Being able to take that in to help those people in need, is a big benefit. I also always talk about movable homes, and I had this conversation with Dominique. Movable homes in areas like a New Orleans, where you're dealing with areas that deal with hurricanes. So it's not, we were talking about shelters, storm shelters the other week, but in areas like New Orleans that deal with hurricanes, the ability to use movable homes for that community, you get fair warning with hurricanes to know when it's time to evacuate. So using movable homes in those areas, because those people rebuild and rebuild and rebuild, and they're building the same homes oftentimes, and the same homes keep getting impacted by these storms. So allowing the use of movable homes and businesses in those areas, you get the fair warning a storm is coming in, and then you offer a service to move those homes out. And so in those conversations that I've had around that, so the thing about areas like that, and for people who don't have access to resources, so in a New Orleans, oftentimes the people most impacted are the people who don't have the finances to leave. And so one of the things, so then you think, well, if they have a tiny house, a movable tiny house, who's to say they'll have money to move that tiny house? And so then you think about it as kind of like almost like an HOA. So you have some covenants around the tiny house. And so money is going into a fund of sort that is banking, holding money together. So when that time comes and people need to move those homes out of the area, there's already money put away for those services, so that the services just then come in and move those tiny houses for them. It's not necessarily on the homeowner to come up with the monies at that time to move their homes. And often, so, and some of the storms aren't major where it has to be moved all the time. So then that, a decision is made when it's time to leave. And so you've already got the funds being put aside to help um, move those people out and then bring them back. A service that the city could provide, because the other option is loss of life. So that is why this conversation is so necessary, and the opportunity that tiny houses and movable businesses and movable homes offer to the conversation. Um, Crystal is saying Virginia Beach has pockets of popping spots, so a mobile business would definitely work here. Yes. Michelle is saying yes, the black couple with the t-shirts. I think you're talking about the couple that I was talking about, that had the tiny house early on, and I think they did have t-shirts, and I can't call their names right now. They had a whole saga going on. Because it ended up not working. Yes, young African American couple. It ended up not working out, and then there was like some conversation around who kept the tiny house. And yes, they were on Tiny House Nation. Um, yeah, it was interesting. Uh, Casey is saying, I know what you mean about strange people in your home. That's why I only allowed one open house when I sold my home. Just the thought of what was going on that day gave me anxiety. Yeah, that's interesting, because I thought about that. I guess I've been that way for a long time, because when I sold my house in Atlanta in 2006, um, I remember coming home one weekend after the realtor, I don't know if I can't remember if it was an open house, but the realtor had shown somebody the house, and I came home, and I had been the first owner of that home, so no one else had lived in the house. But I came home one weekend, and I realized someone had used the restroom and they hadn't flushed the toilet. So I kind of felt violated at that point. It was like, nope, there's no going back because some strange person has used my toilet. So I'm very funny about that as well. Um, Cynthia is saying, I know someone who wants to start a mobile nail salon. Again, I think it's a fabulous idea because you are taking your business to serve areas that are where there's the need, and so that is helping you. I mean, if you just think about how communities change, and so maybe you started your business in this area and it was booming and that was the right place to be, and then the community changes for whatever reason and your business starts declining and your sales are declining, but you're still tied down to that building. A movable business just allows you to go serve the area in areas where you can make the most money, make the most impact, find the most business. And again, just I think about how I know friends who have salons and they are kind of like mobile stylists. So they might have a salon in one city, but they visit other cities. So I have a friend who lives in Atlanta. She had a salon in Atlanta and she wanted to expand into Charlotte. And I think at some point she was considering moving to Charlotte, but she wanted to build her business. I also know someone in Charlotte who had a salon in Florida. I think she relocated to Florida and had both salons. Uh, that is being able to take advantage of the best of both worlds. And what they ended up doing, they identified the days that they were going to be in those areas, and that way you go ahead and build up the appointments. You know, people love your services and they know you're only in this area for the week. You line up your appointments and you know you are going to make this money once you go to that area because people are anticipating you being in the area. Casey is asking, what is Tim's tiny house company name? Preservation Tiny House. And I need to check in with Tim. I'll put a link to his um, business in the chat. Um, Movable homes in those areas is a great idea. Absolutely. And I think you're talking about my conversation just as we were talking about New Orleans. Yes, yes. It would be cheaper for the town to move the tiny homes rather than having to rebuild. To me, it's a no-brainer. Cheaper. You have less risk for loss of life. Insurance companies like to keep paying over and over. I feel like the insurance companies would absolutely get involved because it's saving them some money. Um, so yeah, Rosalind is saying, I would like to start a tiny house moving service. I hear most people use large tow trucks. I was just having this conversation with my cousin. Um, yes, most people, I won't say most, I hate saying most when I don't have statistics to back it up. A lot of tiny house people don't have the actual truck, myself included, to relocate their home. So we do use tow services. I use a tow service one for the professionalism because that tow service is going to have insurance, all of the things that they know what they're doing. I don't, and I prefer to use them. Also because they're going to have the size of truck required to move my house. There is absolutely a market for that. Um, the vendors that I know in the market are that I don't know any vendors of color in the market. Black vendors of color. I have had um, tow. I have had people work for those companies and be black and come move my house, but I don't know of any black owned businesses. And so And I'm often recommending businesses for people who need the service. So I think it's a great opportunity, and I would be happy to support your business. Cynthia is saying our homeless shelter is working on placing tiny houses on some land they have for those who are employed as transitional housing. It's smart. There are quite a few areas that are using tiny houses for that um, same opportunity. The ones that I really love are the ones that also provide some type of support, like you're saying, as transitional housing. So it's not just housing, but they're also providing some of the services, kind of like we saw Dr. Joanne's psychiatric service. Um, Counseling services that the unhoused may need, helping them get back into the workforce, educational support. They're providing the services within that community, but also able to help that person navigate being housed again, taking care of their house, and transitioning from being on the street into housing and providing all of the services they need. Because oftentimes it's not just the physical house that the person needs. They need the support around them. Oftentimes, I think I've read where people will say it's not just beneficial to place them in housing if you're not giving them the support. And so there's a big opportunity to do that with tiny houses. No, there is not enough sage to come behind folks in a in an open house. Robert is saying something major insurance companies could get behind of a Black entrepreneur to build a business supplying temporary homes in known disaster areas. Absolutely. I think that's a great idea. The thing that we, I think, are all familiar with are the temporary housing that the government has provided in areas that have suffered um, from disasters, and how their housing doesn't, I think there's been problems with the housing. I don't know if it was lead, some type of health issues with the housing. And so providing good housing for as temporary homes is definitely a need. Mobile acupuncturist, I think that's a great idea. Robert is off point, off subject. He's asking about a ring. So on my hand. So Robert, I wear rings on all of the fingers that I have on my hand that I feel like wearing rings on, because I am not married, but these fingers belong to me. So wherever I feel like I want to wear rings, I'm going to wear the rings until I need to do something different. So that's the answer to your question. And stay on topic, Robert. Don't disturb everybody here getting off topic. All it takes is you to say something, and everybody's gonna go down the rabbit hole. Um, all right, let me see what else. That's all I had to talk about today. Is to help us and help areas like this. This is my wish, is to help areas not just think of housing and home ownership and business ownership relative to land ownership, because that is the way that land ownership, if we go back full circle to understanding land ownership and land theft and the things that keep the divide ever growing in um, wealth, um, it has to do with land, and shifting the dynamic so that it is not just the same people who have access to land who are steady growing in wealth, and thinking of land ownership and home ownership differently, is the thing. And I feel like you're it's preaching to the choir, because it is the setup is by design. We know that. So it's a lot of preaching to the choir, but there is also an opportunity for people who want to think of doing things differently and who want to um, affect change. And some of the younger generation, even though a lot of the younger generation they're just as racist as the older generation, but there are some pockets of people, and there are a lot of black and brown people who have opportunity, who are leading cities and areas. And so, if we stop thinking of um, the capitalistic society and home ownership and land ownership, the way society is currently set up, and we start thinking in ways of cooperative communities. Um, this is an opportunity that movable homes and businesses present. Um, and that is the way that I feel like we have to think in order to impact and affect change. So Robert is asking about land theft. I'll provide a link to that. So um, I've spoken about farmers and the work that I have been trying to do to pair Black farmers with Black tiny house owners. And Black farmers continue to have, the articles say they continue to lose their land, but it's not really losing their land. It is land being stolen. In dealing with federal programs, there have been um, class action lawsuits with seed companies who have sold seed to farmers, Black farmers that they knew were, there's a word for it, but it wasn't real seed. And I can't think of the name of what you call it, but it was, for lack of the appropriate word, fake seed. And they sold these to Black farmers, and obviously the Black farmer is not going to know that they were sold fake seeds until they've done everything to the crop, and now it's time for the crop to grow, and then you realize nothing is growing because you were sold fake seed. That was a lawsuit. There's information about how farmers who have needed loans and who have, as things, disasters have impacted farms, and they go and get a loan or get assistance from areas, and there are numbers that show how most of the time Black farmers don't receive um, funding to support them as their white counterparts do. Also, land theft in ownership. So, heirs, what is it? Heirs property, where the titles aren't clear as to who owns the land, and then somebody comes in purposely and buys out one of the heirs, which then throws a challenge into the whole ownership, because I think everybody has to be on the same page for heirs property. Purposely making the Black farmer in experience hardship in a way that they then cannot continue taking care of their land, and then an investor or a white farmer or somebody comes in and buys that land, and so that is land theft. The numbers of people who, Black farmers who owned land, there's some statistics that show how much it has been in decline over the last, I've forgotten how many years, but I'll provide all of that information in the description, video description, so that you can have more information. That is the land theft that I'm talking about. Um, let's see. Thank you, Michelle. Um, Casey is saying another idea I saw at the Truist Park Braves game is a couple bring a mobile unit with rentable lockers for those that are turned away at the game due to handbag size contraband. I have had to use them. That's brilliant. That's all I'm going to say, is that is brilliant. That's why I should write down my ideas. I had a similar idea that I saw out of need for something like that, and I can't think of what it was. And now I need to think about it, so and go build it myself. That's brilliant, because it happens all of the time. Where, especially if you didn't drive, you rode the train or something, some type of you. Uber, and now you don't have anywhere to put your bag or put your things that you can't take into the venue. So that's brilliant. I love that. I love when people are thinking outside of the box, and using their resources for things like that. Lisa is saying she's going to the Florida Tiny House Festival in November. Lisa, I don't get down with those folks, and you can, last episode we talked about that, but have fun, be safe, and enjoy. Casey is saying the 1619 Project podcast has a good episode on the criminal things the U.S. government has done to Black farmers on purpose. The system operates as designed. Um, yep, absolutely. Rosalind is saying there's a big issue with the railroad trying to take land owned by Black farmers right now. It's atrocious. Absolutely. Um, in rural areas where the property is land with less trees on it, they start moving your property markers if you don't live near there. The interesting thing to me, like, we know all of these things happen. There are lawsuits. It happens every day. It's happening right now as we're sitting here discussing it. It is what continues to increase the wealth gap. Um, but then you still will have those folks who will come back and say racism doesn't exist, or it would go away if you quit talking about it, or we're making that stuff up, and that's the frustrating part for me. No, it is how society was designed in a way, from enslavement. It is the way things were written, where Black people were three-fifths of a person. All of those things are part of this society, that where it should have been burnt down. The all of those things should have been burnt down and started over. But they've tried to patch it in different ways, but it's still the same society. So yeah. Crystal said, "Yeah, I went to two tiny house festival and was like, nah." Um, Yeah, be safe in Florida. That's one of the things. I shared my experience at that, um with that particular festival. I think that was last week we talked about that. So yes, be careful. Uh I am late. Oh, did Florida treat you unfairly? Can someone send me the info on Florida tiny home meeting? Yes, we talked about that last week, the challenges that I had. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Sandra. The challenges that I had at that event, and the challenges that I had with the person who runs that festival. And I talked about that in depth last week. And I don't get down with those folks. Florida is a challenge because Florida is a challenge with their racist governor. So, to me, it makes me sad that it is one of the most beautiful places, in the United States, and they have, a racist governor, and all of those things. But yeah, yeah. Um, Casey is saying, I've come to the conclusion that the only people claiming racism doesn't exist are racist. Absolutely. The people who aren't impacted by it are the first people to say, um, that it doesn't exist, because they don't have to deal with it. We deal with it all day, every day, as just part of our existence, and so, you know, it. My point exactly. It's the reason I've always championed the support of Black businesses. I'm there with you. I am there with you, Robert. No, we can't fix the system. It needs to be redone. You can't put a patch on something that's broken and expect it to work better. Um, Jewel, you are such a wealth of information. Land theft is indeed a thing. I am looking for ways to protect my acres and ensure that when I move on, that my family can benefit without having to sell. Please do that. That is of utmost importance. Taking care of your family from a legal perspective so that everything is lined up. All right. Thank you all. Thank you, Sandra. I'm gonna drop this in if y'all feel like sharing some love. I usually don't ask for myself, but I'm gonna put it out there. Y'all feel free to drop me some love. Sandra always drops some love, and I appreciate it. Um, Sandra has some fabulous things going on, and hopefully we'll be able to talk about her stuff as she is open to sharing. And she also has a beautiful tiny house. So I've been having the opportunity to help her navigate her area for tiny houses, and so I appreciate you. Oh yeah, they do deal with it. They're the ones dishing it out. You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Okay. Um, I see a thumbs down. Who gave me a thumbs down? Um, anyway, that's all I had to talk about today. Maybe we'll have a guest next week if somebody responds. I have tried to reach out to Mama Shu at the Avalon tiny home community in Detroit. I reached out to Dr. Joanne. I reached out to a young black girl who has a cabin in the woods, and she's um, got some animals and things. And her story would be fabulous. Estate planning is key, absolutely. Um, Casey, yes, I do have a PO box. Casey is asking. Yep, I can. I actually don't mind dropping my address in. I'll drop it in the chat. Um, Let me do that. Y'all know I can't um, type and talk at the same time. But it is it looks like a address, but it is a PO box. So that's why I don't mind sharing it, because if somebody shows up there, that's on them. I ain't gonna be there. There you go. Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a safe and wonderful week, everybody. Thank you, Crystal. Thank y'all for coming. I again, hopefully we'll have a guest. If not, we'll figure out something to keep us informed and in conversation. So I am going to do my closeout. Thank you very much. I hope everybody has a great week and y'all be safe. I will update the video with the information that I promised I'd share, and then we'll go from there. Okay, Crystal, I would, that's what I was trying to say. The young lady has a homestead, and I wanted to share her story. So yes, I would love to connect. So let's talk when you get a chance. All right. Let me get to the right screen. Here we go. Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you all. Robert, you're fine. I was teasing you. You know you were fine. Jules' business should be mobile. I'm working on it. Um, Day is asking the date, time, location of Florida tiny home. I'm thinking you're talking about the festival. I'm sure if you Google it, if somebody knows it and wants to drop it in the chat, Day, I'm sorry, I'm petty. I'm not dropping it in any of my information. But if somebody wants to drop it for Day, but if you Google Tiny House Festival in Florida, I'm sure it will pop up um, for you. Sorry, and sorry, not sorry, because I'm petty for only for reasons, and I don't get down with them folks, so I can't market their information for them. All right. I thank you all very much for showing up as you do. This has been the What's Your Question segment of the Tiny House series. Absolutely. Google Florida Tiny Home Festival. And they, nothing personal. I can't support them. Um, absolutely. Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate you. I appreciate you all. All right, we will be back in conversation next week. I hope everybody has a great week, and we will talk soon. Thank you again, and talk soon. Take care.